San Francisco, California, May 2011. Michelle Lee, a 26-year-old woman, lived with her large and friendly family, her parents, her brother Michael, and her cousin Christine. Their home was always filled with joy, laughter, and life. Michelle's mother, who worked as a nurse, became a true inspiration and role model for her daughter. After her mother passed away, Michelle decided to continue her work and dedicate herself to medicine. She became a reliable pillar for her family, supporting everyone, learning to drive, preparing delicious meals, shopping, and always offering wise advice. In 2011, Michelle enrolled in an intensive nursing training program. She had every chance to graduate with honors in just 6 months, completing her internship in the maternity ward of a local hospital. On May 20, 2011, after a long shift at the medical facility, Michelle decided to quickly stop by her car in the parking lot to pick up some things. She headed towards her vehicle but suddenly stopped, turned around abruptly, and within a few minutes, her white SUV swiftly left the parking lot. When all the students were being gathered at the end of the shift, Michelle was nowhere to be found. Her personal belongings were left in the break room, her phone was not answering, and her car unexpectedly returned to the parking lot but disappeared again almost immediately. This behavior was completely out of character for Michelle. Her instructor, suspecting something was wrong, immediately contacted the police. The following morning, 10 hours after the girl's disappearance, there was still no word from her. Michelle's brother, along with other family members, began the search, involving the police and volunteers, but it seemed as if the girl had simply vanished into thin air. Michelle's friends and colleagues, clearly distressed by her disappearance, arrived at the police station. They insisted that the girl's behavior was extremely unusual, and they refused to leave until a full-fledged investigation was launched. The officers immediately realized the gravity of the situation. Detectives began their search at the hospital parking lot, while Michelle's ex-boyfriend, with whom she maintained a friendly relationship, started calling her relatives to inform them about what had happened. In the parking lot, where Michelle's Honda was parked, traces of blood were found. Around 9 a.m., an hour after the search began, the car itself was discovered. The vehicle was locked and neatly parked in a visitor's spot near an apartment building, just a kilometer away from the hospital. On the back seat of the car lay Michelle's laptop and a stranger's student ID from Samuel Merritt University. The girl had no connection to the owner of this document, and it was completely unclear how it ended up in her car. It was later revealed that the card had been stolen a few days before Michelle's disappearance. Detectives quickly concluded that this was not the work of a random criminal but someone who knew the girl's schedule well. Most likely, the perpetrator stole the ID to gain access to the hospital building, then lured Michelle to the parking lot, and disappeared with her in her own car. The theory that someone simply attacked the girl in the parking lot seemed unlikely. According to hospital records, half an hour after Michelle went to the parking lot, a woman claiming to be her called the admissions department. She asked to be connected to Michelle's instructor but was told it was the wrong number. The stranger on the other end of the line asked to relay a message that Michelle's father had suffered a heart attack. When Michelle's car was towed for further inspection in the morning, her brother Michael unexpectedly received a message from his sister's phone, "I'm okay." Another message followed, "I haven't disappeared, the phone is glitching and erased all the data, these SMS are draining the battery." Later, Michelle's friends began receiving strange and clearly fake messages, one after another. They mentioned a flat tire, the girl returning to Reno, needing a break from social media, feeling unwell, and wanting to rest. Michelle's ex-boyfriend, noticing activity on her phone, immediately texted her but received only a question in response, "Who is this?" By May 31, the reward for information about Michelle's whereabouts had risen to $220,000, and within a few days, it reached almost $500,000. The Lee family hired a private detective, and over 100 volunteers joined the search, splitting into 14 teams and combing an area several kilometers in radius. The reward amount continued to increase. While studying Michelle's relationships, an interesting detail emerged. It turned out that she had problems with a longtime friend named Giselle Esteban. The girls had been close friends for many years and even enrolled in the same college. Giselle was dating a man named Scott, with whom she had a 6-year-old daughter. However, their relationship ended badly, and that's when issues arose between Michelle and Giselle. Even before Giselle started dating Scott, Michelle had gone on a couple of dates with him but quickly realized they were better suited as friends. There was never any romance or intimacy between them, yet Giselle became obsessively jealous. Giselle's behavior grew increasingly strange, and her relationship with Michelle began to deteriorate. Michelle continued to be friends with Scott and had no intention of ending their communication just because Giselle wanted her to. The girl did not pay much attention to her friend's odd and persistent claims, as she had been in a relationship with another guy for a long time. Meanwhile, Scott was simply living his life, unaware of the accusations Giselle was concocting in her head. When detectives visited Giselle to ask her a few questions, she made no attempt to hide her overt animosity towards Michelle. There was no pretending. Giselle immediately began irritably recounting how she had long asked Michelle to stay away from her daughter and stop communicating with their mutual friends. She described her relationship with Scott as very painful, calling him her best friend who had betrayed her with his ex-fiancée. The detectives tracked down Scott, and he candidly shared his version of events. They noticed that he was genuinely concerned about Michelle's disappearance, participated in the search, and attended meetings and vigils held in her honor. Scott spoke about how Giselle treated him and his family. At one point, when their relationship reached another crisis, Giselle, along with their daughter, moved back in with her family. Scott, wanting to provide his daughter with the best life possible, sometimes tried to mend his relationship with Giselle, but all attempts invariably failed. He showed the detectives a lengthy correspondence with Giselle, in which she constantly mentioned Michelle and wrote harsh messages like, "I hope you find what you're looking for in such a vile person like her." Messages from Giselle were becoming increasingly aggressive. She accused Michelle of destroying their family and threatened that she would soon become unwanted. Giselle also sent messages to Michelle herself, insulting her and accusing her of ruining her family and following her to San Francisco. Scott showed the police recordings of one of Giselle's outbursts of rage. In the video, she was sitting in a car with their daughter in the back seat. Giselle demanded that Scott be honest about his relationship with Michelle, threatening to kill them both if he lied again. She stated that this was her last and final warning. Scott mentioned that Giselle had been placed in a psychiatric clinic for a while, where she was diagnosed with manic depressive and bipolar disorders. After that, Giselle continued to come to Scott's house, sometimes even entering and simply sitting in a room until someone noticed her. Scott managed to obtain full custody of their daughter, which further enraged Giselle, so she moved back to Hayward to be closer to them. 3 days before Michelle's disappearance, the court issued a restraining order against Giselle, prohibiting her from coming within 30 meters of Scott and his family. Nearly a week had passed since the disappearance of 26-year-old nurse Michelle Lee. She vanished when she went to her car in the hospital parking lot. Her vehicle was later found parked on a nearby street. The police continued their search, distributing flyers with Michelle's photo. At the same time, investigators from Hayward began communicating with the police from Fairfield about the unsolved murders of Nurse Pham, which had occurred a year earlier. It was discovered that both girls were studying at medical colleges and had disappeared under similar circumstances. However, unlike Pham's case, where her car was found unlocked, Michelle's vehicle was carefully locked, as if the last person behind the wheel wanted to protect the contents of the car. The police officers continued to review surveillance camera footage, hoping to obtain clear shots of Michelle's car. Her brother did not believe that his sister could have simply gotten lost, as she always stayed in touch with her family and even reminded them to call their grandmother on Mother's Day. The reward for any information about Michelle's whereabouts continued to grow, and the search never stopped. The police still hoped to find Michelle alive, but the evidence collected indicated that the chances of that were diminishing with each passing day. Their worst fears were confirmed when traces of Michelle's blood were found in her car. They then called Michelle's family and informed them that the case was now being treated not as a disappearance but as a murder investigation. Despite this, Michelle's family, filled with determination, continued their search, hoping for the best and refusing to believe the worst until there was irrefutable proof. Giselle remained the only suspect in this case, so the police invited her for a full interrogation. By that time, she was already pregnant with her second child. During the conversation, she admitted that she was indeed at the hospital the night Michelle disappeared, allegedly for a routine medical examination. When asked about their friendship, Giselle referred to Michelle as a sister but noted that their relationship had deteriorated due to a mistake made by Michelle and Scott. Giselle was released, but the police continued to monitor her, even installing a GPS tracker on her car. Investigators had strong reasons to believe she was involved in Michelle's disappearance but doubted whether she acted alone. Giselle was petite, standing only 158 centimeters tall, so detectives wondered if she was physically capable of carrying out the abduction. Meanwhile, the police intensified their investigative measures. They questioned Giselle's neighbors, who confirmed that law enforcement officers had recently searched her apartment and car. Giselle told the press that she had nothing to do with Michelle's disappearance. Even Michelle's father, who had flown in from Vietnam, joined the search for Michelle and urged all local residents to help find his daughter. An interesting twist occurred when Scott called the police and reported that he had found Michelle's phone on the back seat of his car. Everything indicated that Giselle had planted it there, as the GPS tracker on her vehicle showed that she had driven to Scott's house several times. The security service of the medical college where Michelle was studying analyzed data from the stolen student card. It was discovered that on May 26, the day before Michelle's disappearance, the card had been used to gain access to the building. Surveillance cameras captured Giselle posing as a prospective student and obtaining access to the card by expressing her interest in enrolling in the college. Having acquired the card, Giselle began checking door locks and entering various classrooms. She also examined the instructor's desk, where she found the students' class schedules, including Michelle's. Now, knowing the exact time Michelle was supposed to be at the college the following day, Giselle left the building. Analysis of mobile phone data showed that on the day of the disappearance, Michelle and Giselle were simultaneously in the same location, confirming the fact that they had met. The day after Michelle's disappearance, Giselle visited an Apple store and asked to unlock an iPhone, explaining to the technician that her daughter had accidentally locked the phone. After successfully unlocking the device, Giselle left and headed to Chuck E. Cheese's, where surveillance cameras recorded her writing messages. It was at this time that Michelle's friends began receiving strange and obviously fake messages, which was confirmed by data from cell towers. The messages were coming from Michelle's phone. Despite the absence of the victim's body, the police had already gathered enough evidence to arrest Giselle Esteban on charges of first-degree murder. During the arrest, a pair of shoes with Michelle's blood on the sole was found near the front door of her house. Moreover, Giselle's hair and DNA were discovered on the steering wheel of Michelle's car. Although Michelle's body had not yet been found, all the evidence pointed to Giselle's involvement. The police began an active search for the victim's remains. Later, the investigation revealed that a few days before Michelle's disappearance, Giselle had searched the internet for information on how to cause a heart attack without leaving traces, how to follow someone unnoticed, and how to pick locks. She was also interested in poisonous gases such as chlorine and carbon monoxide. After Michelle's disappearance, her name was entered into the search bar over 300 times. On September 17, 10 days after Giselle's arrest, Michelle's remains were found in a shallow grave in a remote area, approximately 20 kilometers from the suspect's home. 3 months had passed, and the body was severely decomposed, making it impossible to determine the exact cause of death. The coroner of Alameda County confirmed that the remains belonged to Michelle. In September 2012, Giselle Esteban stood trial. She pleaded not guilty, claiming that the murder was accidental, committed in a moment of anger, and that Michelle had allegedly provoked her. Giselle's lawyer tried to prove that it was an unintentional, not premeditated, murder. However, the defendant herself did not testify and appeared completely emotionless in the courtroom, showing no remorse. The prosecution suggested that Giselle had planned the attack in advance. She had stalked Michelle, studied her schedule, waited for the victim to go to the parking lot, and attacked her with a sharp object. This explained the traces of blood and how she was able to load Michelle's body into the car and drive it away. The prosecutor called Giselle a sociopath, noting her cold-bloodedness and prudence. He emphasized that it was a meticulously planned attack on a person who was not even aware of the danger. Giselle was found guilty of first-degree murder. She did not react to the verdict in any way and left the courtroom in silence. Later, Giselle stated that if she had been a juror herself, she would have also delivered a guilty verdict. The court sentenced Giselle Esteban to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Michelle's family was disappointed. They had hoped for life imprisonment without the possibility of release, so they would never have to face the murderer again. But because of this sentence, they will be forced to attend parole hearings when Giselle files the corresponding petition. Michelle's brother, Michael, was deeply affected by the loss. He recalled how his sister had planned to follow in the footsteps of their late mother and become a nurse to help people. For the family, losing Michelle was an immense pain. They hope that justice has prevailed, although nothing can bring back their beloved sister and daughter. Michelle's dream of becoming a nurse and continuing her mother's work was cut short the moment Giselle killed her in the hospital parking lot in the Bay Area. Prosecutors argue that the cause of the crime was a burst of jealousy when Giselle mistakenly believed that Michelle had started dating her boyfriend. Michelle's brother hopes that she will be remembered for many years to come, even when the murderer will be able to file a petition for early release in 2037. Michelle's family plans to actively participate in these hearings to remind the judges of the uniqueness of this case and to show how tragic their sister's fate was. The judge noted that for early release, Giselle must show genuine remorse, which was not observed from her at the time of the trial. Shortly after Giselle's arrest, she gave birth to a boy, who was placed in the custody of his father. There were rumors that Scott could be the child's father, but he denied this. The identity of the real father was never revealed. Michelle's family continued their volunteer work, helping other families who had experienced the disappearance of loved ones and raising awareness about such cases. Michael, Michelle's brother, expressed confidence that his sister is now in heaven with their mother. This thought helps Michael to accept the loss to some extent and worry less about the future. On the day Michelle disappeared, her father spent Father's Day participating in the search for his daughter. He had always admired her determination and active life but admitted that he had never once suggested spending this holiday together. Now he regrets it and dreams of going back in time, even for one day, to invite her to celebrate Father's Day together. After the trial ended, Michelle's family did not stop fighting for justice. Instead, they decided to channel their pain and anger into creating an organization in her memory. The Michelle Lee Foundation has become an important platform for supporting families who have lost loved ones and those who are searching for missing relatives. They established annual events and fundraising campaigns, supporting people's search services. In addition, they began advising other families, teaching them how to act correctly in the first hours after the disappearance of a loved one. Every year on Michelle's birthday, her friends, family, and those who have been helped by the foundation gather to honor her bright personality. It has become not just a day of mourning, but a celebration of her life, a day of support and love. People bring flowers and release white balloons into the sky, symbolizing hope and remembrance. Scott, who found himself entangled in this terrible story, also joined the work of the foundation. He decided to change his life and devote himself to raising his daughter. For him, it became a way to atone for the mistakes of the past and prove that he was capable of more. Scott actively participated in the foundation's activities to help others avoid a similar tragedy. As for Giselle, her chances of early release were extremely low. Even with the passage of time, her unwillingness to repent and emotional coldness turned her into a symbol of the destructive power of hatred and envy. This story of how jealousy and unfounded suspicions can ruin lives has become an important lesson for many, especially for those suffering from toxic relationships and distrust. In the end, despite the tragedy of the situation, Michelle's light continued to illuminate the path for others. Her story and the memory of her have become a source of strength and inspiration, reminding everyone that love and compassion can overcome hatred and jealousy. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.